time of year, we're always looking for new ideas for future stunt projects. And this book is called Fighters from Joe Adamusco. This is really one of the nicer ones. Some nice, real nice paint jobs if you're looking for some unusual paint jobs. And anybody that would like to borrow any of these books, hey, we're glad to loan them out. No problem. Book doesn't wear out when another person reads it, especially if they enjoy it. Ideas is a Spitfire cockpit. Get some ideas for detailing your next cockpit. A gun sight on the top would be a nice addition. We have something similar to that on the Seafire. The yoke, pedals. Harold Price modeled years ago to boot and pull Defiant. Nice book to have in our library. Appreciate that very much. From Joe Adamusco. Now we're back from the Willow Grove meet, and boy, it was a good one. Exciting, anyway. Sadly, we lost 3 planes last week, and I'm always aware of that. Kind of puts a damper on our fun, but what I've done, the Typhoon is ready to have the back masking pulled off, and we'll see if that paint is hard enough to be buffed. I've been trying to build up this little fillet edge here, just by dabbing on coats of clear to fill in some little gaps that I had. And that's not finished yet, but I don't want to put a lot more on. The reason is I don't want to build up the clear so thick on the nose. A problem when you're doing the repairs, if you build the clear up too thick, it can come off like saran wrap because it has a life of its own then. It's just too thick. Paint isn't made to be 1/8 of an inch thick. So rather than risk that, I'm going to take this over to the work table, get rid of the back masking, and get a little Gorhams and some 1200 sandpaper and see if that's ready to buff out. Couple of things I like to do, because we're still in a very humid time, just in case I go through where I'm buffing out, because we really don't have a lot of paint on here, I want to be prepared that I can touch it up. So what I've done is left the dehumidifier and the air conditioner on for this whole day, so that if I need to go down and touch this up, I'll have it, I won't have humid conditions there, because we have been in a real humid spell. Now, you notice I've done this whole repair without taking a whole plane apart. If this were the winter time, I would have taken the body off the wing, taken the motor out, the tank out, and it would have made it a lot easier. But I wanted to get this back in the air as soon as possible. That was my whole motive on this. Little spots here where I'm going to have to sand dust out because we don't have a dust-free environment, and I get the feeling the bird ran his feather or something across there. You can see we always have a paint line that we have to work. We have to buff that off. Now, if there was any chance at all that this was, you can see how easy it's coming off, but it would be good if you were in doubt, just heat it with a little hair dryer, heat the tape. It just softens the glue up just a little bit. And I always give John Brodak the credit for that. He was watching one of the videos one time and gave me that tip, and it's worked perfectly. A lot of times it's the simplest little tip you can pick up off a tape. Simple little thing, and it just makes your whole life easier. Like the tinfoil. Try back masking with newspaper and see what a mess you have with joints and everything. Again, tinfoil just makes that as reasonable as can be. We have the little stripe around here. Now, if this were a scale model, this little edge here would be perfectly acceptable, but, you know, this isn't a scale model. What the judges are going to want to see when they go to, you know, if this goes to appearance point ever again, they're going to want to rub their hand there and feel no gap, no line. So what we're going to do is work, first I'm going to M600 and 1200 sand this whole area down. Try to get any of the little dust particles out. I tried to do this even though we had extremely humid conditions with the minimum of retarder. The little dust spots, or I suspect the bird might have touched that or something, but it doesn't matter. We're going to block sand this all out. We also ended, and I thought that was kind of creative, ended our trim line right where the canopy joint would be. So even if somebody rubs their hand over it, that's where the prototypical joint would normally be. So again, you don't know. We don't even know if we're ever going to go to appearance judging with this again. But we would like to sand this and just go out onto this just the minimum. And I don't want to hit the exhaust stacks if I possibly can. Just get as much. Look at this bird. Just get this to feather edge just the minimum and get out all the dust with Sikkens M600. Now the other thing is I don't want it to drip around the side of the fuselage and wind up in here, so I'm going to try to just do one little spot at a time, as small as possible. Always good to do a small spot. The choice is, of course, you could use Windex. I've used Windex in spots where I don't want the M600, say, to go down inside by the motor. I'm trying to be real careful around these vents. In fact, I think I've sanded through here in a spot. This we're going to find out in about a minute. This was where the paint was needing a little bit extra clear. Now, one of the things to remember, I guess one of the lessons here is when you have enough clear on a plane, what's nice about it, even though it may be an extra ounce of weight, when it comes time to repair, like right here, I can't feel that joint. Up by the canopy, up here, that's as perfect as it gets. I just need to work in here. And again, I'm trying not to let any drip around the side, so normally I'd just flood this. I'm not flooding it. I want to get up by the canopy. And this is the kind of repair a lot of people wouldn't even bother doing. They just leave the tape on. Well, what I'm trying to do is make these planes, that when I'm done with them, they're ready to go up in a Spitfire bedroom. And I certainly want to keep this in as nice a shape as possible. It's a true front row plane. And I use my hands all the time. Now there is no way you could feel that canopy joint now. The buffing. I put some tape over the manifold so that I wouldn't get, they're going to have to be touched up. It looks like I've gotten some chips out of it while I was sanding, some little nicks and dings and stuff, but it doesn't matter. Anything that you can screw up, you can repair. That's my, well, maybe almost. If you can, and I'm the master of getting it screwed up and then figuring some way of fixing it that nobody knows I did it. Keep it a secret. I heard a funny thing from somebody. They sent me an email and they said there's a guy out on the internet on RC Online that says Windy doesn't build his own planes, he farms it out. I wish somebody out there would send him, I don't do RC Online, I don't have time for that nonsense, but I wish somebody would send him a video. I guess he doesn't have a VCR. Anyway, this is a couple days old, but it really, if I let it sit another week, it would come up even quicker. You can see how, let's get a close-up of that. Idea of how this says peep seats. Get out of here, you're eating gorms. The bird loves to eat gorms. I'm trying to get down into this crack. Again, the beautiful part about Brodak Dope is you can do these repairs. Now, if we were coming up on a contest where we absolutely had to fly this plane tomorrow, say, and this was the last plane we had, and then, you know, for whatever reason, we could really do this in a shorter time window. This repair from start to finish took about a week, but I think once you get it buffed back into this, and I'm just trying to show just about how long it takes to get repaired paint back. Canopy will be the same way. So I get this, to get the gorms finished, or up to where I want it. And the last step is to go over it with Final Shine. The Final Shine will seal it. And because this is new dope, I do not want to wax it for at least a month. You can see, I think we got a pretty good shine out of it anyway. The Final Shine puts that final little gloss on it, and we'll go right up over the cockpit, the canopy. Well, you can see the quality of that shine, but it's excellent. And so what we've done is maintained a plane that would not possibly not be a front row plane with the canopy not perfect like that. Well, perfect, better. And you can see, now let's go up on the canopy. Because this is the part a lot of people, well, a lot of people, they don't answer the phone is what they don't do. Complete buff out, the supervisor of our crew. Look at this. Look at this. Hey! Hey! I'm going to send you out to live with Warren Walker in California. You'll get sunburned. Look at this. I don't believe this. Here I'm trying to buff it out, trying to clean it up. By the way, one of the things I did, I put a little time into cleaning up the tail. There was quite a bit. Well, here's the side I haven't done yet. You can see. Look at the difference. Just a quick buff up with Gorms and Final Shine and little 1200. And then, of course, make sure the supervisor approves of this whole operation. Hey, get away from those Hey! Chickie's approval. We're just about ready to do some of the other work that we're going to do on this, but we're going to wait a couple of days. We still have some tank testing to do. You think you've seen it all. The rich man comes over, and what has he got? Oh, look at this. Oh, all right. A Cardinal Stuka. Oh, no, a Strega Stuka.
Depending on which one you...
A Matt Newman Stuka.
No.
Oh, no, that Matt Newman stuff.
What do you think?
Is it going to have a pipe in it, or what?
Yeah, we're going to have a pipe.
Where the hell are you going to put the pipe?
Well, the pipe is going to drop down somewhere.
Oh, my God, that's going to look ugly.
I don't know.
You can't put, even I can't make a pipe that skinny. What are you going to do with that?
It's going to come out. And some of it...
Why don't you get one of those no trim-back mufflers?
I can go ahead and drop this fuselage a little bit further. Okay?
No, it's got to stay skinny in the back.
But in the back, well, that's okay. I can move the fuselage, make it wider down here. You know what I'm saying?
Rich, there's no pipe in the world that's going to fit in here. Trust me.
This is a...
yeah, it's not going to... That's going to ruin everything.
This is the way it's going to look. It's going to look like this.
See, I could make you a pipe that would be skinny up to there. But see, you still got... Man, you got a head. This is not going to be any good. You're better off putting a muffler on this. Get a bit of muffler from Randy or from Noel. Get one of those mufflers.
Rear?
No, a rear exhaust with a PA6. That's what Noel has. It runs okay.
With a rear exhaust muffler?
Yeah, a rear exhaust. Yeah.
Yeah, well, fine. You know, I can put a muffler here. That'll drop down to here.
Or you could have Art Adamson make you one. Art makes them. So you'd have it and then let it exhaust out here. Then you can keep this, because the Stuka can't be fat. It can't be a Nobler in the back.
No, it's got to be.
Or the canopy is going to look like an AT6.
Yeah, this is the canopy.
Okay, put the canopy over. Now, where'd you get this from?
This is from Heritage.
Okay.
These are nice guys. Oh, okay. Nice guy.
That's a lot. I knew you wouldn't wimp out and you'd make the mold. Wimp. What a wimp.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's practically the same size. It's the
width. Now, when you make this body, you know what you should do?
I've turned
Turn the motor mount sideways.
Yeah.
So it's wider.
I got him down like this.
See, or use how much is that? 3 inches? How wide is that?
Yeah, it's about 2
We'll measure it. What do we don't have a ruler here? Oh. If it's 3 inches.
Yeah, it's about 3 inches.
Yeah. So you better use like, you know what you use? Use the mounts from a Cardinal. 3/8 by 5/8 sideways.
Yeah, that's side flap.
Then yeah, that'll just.
That's what I got here.
Yeah, I can get you a kit motor mounts and just run them sideways. That'll be okay. I think it's cool, but you definitely, a pipe's going to ruin it. It won't be. It'll be, you know.
Yeah, we'll play around with it. But I can make it a little bit. You see, this is the width of the Cardinal fuselage.
Mm-hmm.
See where I got this mark?
Yeah, but you could add a 1/4 inch. Yeah, but you can't hide that.
But then I could go ahead and cowl it the way I have the Stregas.
Yeah,
I can cowl it a little bit, but back here it's got to remain.
Oh, believe me,
got to be narrow.
Rich, I'd love to sell you another pipe. Trust me, but I think it's better if you concentrate on just.
Yeah, maybe a muffler.
Have Big Art. Send him the motor. Have him make you a muffler.
Oh no, I can't send him a motor. I got no more motors. I sent him.
You send him a jet. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same bolt pattern.
I don't have the jet.
One has all his bag of pipe parts. What's in here?
All kinds of pieces.
But see, okay, if you took a used header, when you make the fuselage, now look, watch how this happens. Look. All right, now you got to get a tube and get it welded here, and then just have a stinger come out the bottom. That's what Noel has. Well, let Noel show you what he has. Maybe he's got a spare one or something. Yeah. But that takes care of that whole problem, and you don't have to make a non-scale body then. I got plenty of tubing. You have to worry about tubing.
Beautiful. Yeah, we can do something like this, you know.
Or you could ask Randy if Randy's got a little. But I think Randy's a real big. You want it to be small.
But isn't that going to affect the way the engine is running?
Nah. Noel's engine runs okay. How does Noel's engine run?
What's the purpose of a tuned pipe?
Makes a little bit more volume. So much more volume. Look at the difference in the volume.
When you say volume, and that
the amount of exhaust that's in here, you can quiet it down. So this will be a little louder.
So the purpose of the tuned pipe is just to make it a little more quiet.
Yeah, for the same amount of horsepower. If you make this small like this, it's going to be relatively loud. You can make it with a baffle. We could make something custom, but it can't be any longer than that.
The assumption that this would build up a certain amount of pressure, and it would cause the engine to run more steady.
Well, there's a lot of different thoughts to that. What it does, the biggest overriding thing is it's a lot of volume, it flows a lot of gas.
Okay. So that I will be able to finish this canopy.
This is defective. Look at the big...
Yeah, there's bubbles here. You know, I ordered another one.
Get another one.
You know?
We could fix this, too.
This is probably the way the mold is.
You know? Yeah, it's probably worn out. He probably didn't have like a midgely thing.
Because if you look at it very carefully, you can see where the sanding lines.
Yeah. You could sand that out, too.
Oh, really?
You could fix that.
It's not really finished off as well as the ones you make.
I don't want to... Nothing's as good as the ones
I don't want to...
Come on, if I get one of mine, it doesn't have... That looks like somebody... somebody bit it or something. A mouse ate it or something.
But it's better than nothing. It's better than going ahead and carving a mold.
Now, what you can do with this, here's what you can do. You could send this to Midgley, just the way it is.
Oh, yeah!
Now, you could fill this with Procast, which is expensive.
Make a mold.
Okay, Procast is expensive. Then you'd have a mailer. Then you could take the mold and get rid of all these flaws, get it all perfect, and then use that.
As a mold.
Just keep this for like laying out the body.
This, in fact...
You'd have to talk to Dave about doing
that. The new one, the one that he would make, would be slightly smaller than...
A little bit, yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Because this is... It's not really that bad, really, when you stop and think about it. Because if you look at the...
No, but what I'm saying is if you fill this with filler and Bondo and...
it's going to look shit.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Yeah. Dude, you'd make a mold. Midgley can make that. Or if you tell Midgley to send me the Procast, I'll make the mold down here. We'll hand finish it, and it'll be perfect.
But in addition,
because you can't make a Stuka with a bubble. No, I mean, it's got to have.
It's got to have this.
If that's carved out of wood, it's nonsense.
I ordered his cowl.
Yeah.
He's sending me a fiberglass cowl, and I told him, I said, if it doesn't fit, would I be able to send it back? He said, absolutely. As long as you don't do anything to it.
Don't carve it up. Yeah.
No, as long as, but it's fiberglass.
Why don't you just buy the whole kit?
What do you mean the whole kit?
How much is the kit? $300? You could have used all the parts off it, decals and everything.
No, I don't want to buy the whole kit. It's only $70. So
yeah, but you're going to want the decals, right? You're going to be calling this guy
I'll go to the sign painter.
The cowling?
The sign painter will make me the decals. Yeah. You know, he'll make me the mask. They're all painted.
I would have bought the whole kit if you'd done with it. That'll work, though. Now, you're going to make a standard wing and tail, you're not going to improvise.
No, I'm going to make...
is this going to be square?
A Miss Ashley
tail. But make it square, like a Stuka, and put the little things on the back.
Okay. This I made into an airfoil.
And what kind of...
This is a Strega wing.
Okay. Are you going to get a foam wing or a built-up wing or what?
No, I'm not going to get a foam.
Well, Brodak has the kit and just use the ribs. Or get Bobby Hunt to make you one of those Geo wings.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Just get him do the whole thing.
Yeah, have him make the, because I believe he has the...
Or if you had enough money, we could make you a carbon wing. Ooh. It would even be black or red. But you know what? That ain't going to happen because Rich never goes for any big-ticket items.
Especially when you never go
big money. Big money, Peeps.
Big
money.
He doesn't go for anything, Peeps. Look at a sign on his cage, Rich.
I know.
That's from Howard Rush. Aerodynamic. He's pretty aerodynamic himself.
He's beautiful. Look at this guy.
He likes you.
He's gorgeous.
He must have fleas or something.
Probably.
The guy who was working on the cable TV was making him crazy.
No kidding.
The guy was, he found out I have 4 illegal things hooked up to the cable TV.
You rascal. Look at this guy.
Hey! Watch male dominance. Oh, he doesn't like that. All right, back to the Stuka.
So anyhow, the point that I'm making is,
I don't know how the cowl is going to be. Okay, this is the...
But you're better off without even buying it. Just carve this out of wood, and don't cut the holes for the motor, and I'll make that part. That's an easy thing. That's nothing.
You can make it out of fiber.
Yeah, out of carbon fiber. Then if you screw one up, you got another one.
But the point that I'm making is, should I be affixing it to the doublers? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know.
Put some 1/16 ply on the
The
inside.
thing you don't want to do is this. See, don't make this point. Make this angle come up.
Yeah, round.
Make it come up and go right through the needle valve hole. Then just make this piece.
Okay.
Then we can mold this and
Well, the point is, the cowl is round.
And a Stuka doesn't have a pointy. You got to get one that's
More blunt.
I got one too.
It's beautiful.
See how that is? The way it's machined hollow. Look how you can look right through the nut.
Beautiful.
This is tempered steel. Look how they machined the tip of that. That comes from Russia. And the back plate has you got to cut for the prop, of course.
Yeah.
It's got the knurls for the prop on there.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
I originally bought these for the Typhoon, but they weren't big enough. I wanted bigger.
Oh, this
But they'll be just perfect. That's what a Stuka looks like. Look at a real Stuka.
yeah, here.
It doesn't have a needle nose spinner. It's flat. You boil all the books. Yeah, that's what it looks like. See, this is.
You see this? You see
It's gonna ruin it.
See the cowl the way it is? It comes out like this. That's
We can
why-
do that. No, we can do that. It's no problem.
Okay, but no, you said to end it here. If I end it here, I can't make it come out.
But if you do it here, you're never gonna get the motor to run. Look how the Typhoon does the same thing, Rich. The Typhoon has, you see the way the line is?
Yeah.
You don't want to have the line come up to a point. There's a stress riser here that's going to crack right here.
Yeah, you're right.
Just even if you do this, Rich, where the thing comes down, from there up.
Move
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. move it over.
If you make it come down here, because you're going to have to put exhaust manifolds in.
Oh yeah, I want those, exhausts that you.
Oh, well, you could take mine and cut them up and make something like
Yeah.
that. Then we'll make a special mold. That's no problem. You're going to do a real program here. Do a real
I'm going
program.
to try to do a good job.
And you're going to do a nice finish on it.
Yeah.
You go for the carbon wing. You give me a check with no amount drawn in, and see, anybody but you would be saying, Wendy, yeah, I'd like a carbon fiber wing. Now, the nice thing is if there's no landing gear in this wing, right? The gear in the body, or are you going to put them like in the wing?
I'm going to put it in the wing.
In the wing, okay. Then you got to put the gear blocks in if we make a carbon wing.
Yeah.
But I know how you are about opening that wallet and having a moss fly it. But there's enough here to make one wing if you decide to go for some big bucks. I'll
That's a
talk
lot
to
of
Midgley about it.
It's a lot.
Well, you got to buy 3 yards. You got to buy 3 yards. I got almost 3 yards. I got almost enough to make one more wing. There's a choice.
We have to discuss
Do
it.
you want to build a wing and sand it all out, coat after
We have
coat,
to discuss it.
Rodak dope, all those little open bays? Or do you want the real Kahuna? There's no pressure in my shop. You come here, you do anything, no pressure. Buy me, buy me, buy me, buy
Maybe we will. Maybe we will. As long
At this point in time, because of my mother's health again and my own maladies, I guess is the right word, it's not certain whether we're even going to get to go to the team trials, but what we'd like to do is do some testing and preparation that we can use. Even if we don't go to this team trials, we can go to the next one. Who might not know, one of the things that's unique is it's the only contest in the whole world that I know of that most people make a separate preparation for. You have what I call unique setups. The biggest thing that's different from AMA competition is you can use any lines you want as long as you pass the pull test. So that's a significant thing to consider. What's different for people that maybe don't know it is when a model gets to be 69.9 ounces, and it may be a gram or two different, once it gets to be 70, it must be pull tested 66 pounds. Now, I won't go on and on about this because I think that's the most ridiculous rule in the world, and I think it actually isn't even ridiculous. It's a mistake that somehow slipped through. Beside the point. So what it would mean is all of the models that we have, pretty much that are in the 68 to 69 ounce range, we'd want to get them down under 70 ounces, even if we had to fly without the landing gear or something, because this absolutely destroys models. This will just raise havoc with every joint in the wing. Mentioning is virtually every country in the world is proposing that they change this. But knowing how the politics of F2B are, even if they do change it, it takes 4 years to get the rule to pass. So for all intents and purposes, I just don't want to even participate in something that's like that. So what it's done, it's limited my modeling. It's because most of my planes fit into the high 60s, low 70s. It eliminates planes like Tradition, for instance. You just simply can't. This would destroy the plane. Now, if you build a plane in the beginning with an iron bell crank or something, it's a different story. But for our purposes, this eliminates some of the possibilities. Now, a flight, rather than being 8 minutes, needs to be 7 minutes. Now, I know this will be hard for a lot of people to digest and believe, but the reason they want the thing to be 7 minutes is so more contestants can fly per day, because it's a very involved contest the way they do it. So you would think what they're trying to do is get a flight and get it over with, a flight, get it over with, a flight. But guess what? Absurd within absurd. There's no shut-off allowed, no electronics. So this, again, you get into, whenever you deal with F2B, you get into, it's fun to go to the team trials, and I certainly look forward to it. It's a nice way to prepare for a competition that's totally different than the ones we have. This pretty much kills a lot of the planes that you have, where you don't have a lot of flights, a relatively new plane, where you can't get that motor run to get, you really have about a flight and 10 laps and it's got to shut off, and you're not allowed to shut it off. So when you look at some of these rules, this is not like an AMA contest. Now, in the beginning, what I wanted to do, I wanted to set up the Typhoon specifically for this. Now, it could be that these rules are going to change. Who knows? It's irrelevant right now. What we do have is, if we're going to do, I'll do it even as an exercise, even if I don't go to the team trials. Oh, and then to add insult to injury, you can't use a carburetor. No throttle. So it's almost like they wrote the rules. Well, I'm not going to comment anymore. When you talk about this to other people, you wonder who even wrote this stuff. But anyway, it's all beside the point. I want to lay out what my plan of action is and share some of this stuff with you. Yeah, so we have the Typhoon, and we've repaired the canopy, and it's kind of ready to start flying again. But we know, for instance, with the 91, and we could throttle it to whatever RPM we want and use a full 14-inch prop, maybe even a 15. We wound up using a 14. But we know this package, when it was ready to go with all the electronics, was 66 ounces. Now, what I thought would be worth trying, because these are the kind of things I just like to add to my own knowledge, that when I take the 91 out and put the 72 in, or the 56, it's going to be a dramatically lighter plane by 2, 3, maybe 4 ounces. The problem is, it's not a problem, it's just something I have to keep in mind, because we're only on an 8-inch nose, reducing the weight. When you're on a 10-inch nose, wow, you loosen up an Allen screw and throw it out and the whole plane changes. But we have the weight right up on the CG, so it'll be less dramatic as we take the 91 out and either replace it with any one of the lighter engines, which are 2, 3, or 4 ounces lighter. Because of the length of the nose, it's not as dramatic of a change. Now, in our case, if we're going to set this up for the team trials, one of the things, we can take our little electronic package out, and that's about an ounce. We can take the servo out and whatever, and actually we can make a Venturi. And I thought one of the things I'd try today, Jimmy has Pat Johnson's little Venturi there. He's replicating the tooling, but I'd look at maybe the possibility of making up my own design Venturi, and then I could share that with Pat. We could go back and forth with Paul Walker and Gieske and whatever, and see which one, and the other part of it, works the best. That's the other part of it. But the thing is, it's on an 8-inch nose, so even what I'm looking at here is not really changing the CG as much as getting this down to maybe 62 ounces. Now what I did, I weighed the plane real carefully with no fuel in it, and it is 66 ounces. So seeing how much I can get out of it, I know 2 ounces of it are electronic. These motors here are as much as 4 ounces lighter. And I know that's going to change the CG. It means I may have to resort to using a heavier spinner, a carbon prop. But again, it's the short nose that makes this a little bit different than doing a normal, like a Tiger 60 or a pipe engine, where when that nose is real long and you take something off the end, whoa, the whole thing changes. This is a unique thing. But the nice thing is I'm well within that 70-ounce the death knell of all F2B, where, we won't even talk about it. We're well under it even with the 91. So if these motors prove to be less good or unacceptable for any reason, well, it's really not a big deal. I can just put the 91 back in, throttle it to some given RPM, and fly it at that RPM. Now, I also can knock another ounce out of here. I'm hoping by putting a carbon tank. Now, even though a carbon tank will not change the CG much because, again, it's close up, it'll knock an ounce and a half out of this, and it may be that even with the carbon tank and a smaller motor, we can get this down to about the 60-ounce range. And it'd be fun to see. Now, a lot of times you think, oh boy, every time you lighten up the plane, it's going to get better, but that's not true, not always. There are always conditions like high winds, low winds, turbulence, where it's better to be a little heavier. But anyway, it'll be nice to have these options. So what I'm going to do is in the next week or so, most of the little projects and some of the things I'm going to have on the video are relating to the Typhoon. Working, another thing too I need to do, and these are the things you may even get this down. The 14-inch prop is a lot heavier than the 12-inch, and I hope to wind up possibly in the 12.5-inch range, which knocks even more weight off. So it could be. This will be an interesting exercise when this is all done. And the biggest one is going to be when the carbon tank, because the tank that's in that plane is about 2.5 ounces. And we don't need, if we're going to use a smaller motor, a 72, you really only need a 4.5 ounce tank. And in carbon, that'd probably be 18 grams, something like that. Anyway, that's the thrust of what we're going to try to do. And again, the worst part of all is we don't even know if we're going to be able to go. And then that opens up the door to, I don't want to get too intense about this, but yet I do want to do it as an exercise, just to see, number one, for instance, there's nothing to stop you from flying a plane in AMA stunt with the lighter motor, and it's an exercise in learning. So we're going to see what we can learn from this whole thing. But we really did like having the power of that 91 on tap at all times. We really did like having the electronics. But when it comes to F2B, it's almost like they wrote the F2B rules to, boy oh boy, if you only knew how frustrating it is. Anyway, let's get down to shop and try to get some of these projects underway. Original props that I was using, and I didn't wind up using it. I had gotten some 15.6s. I had cut them to 14, and that proved to be one of the better props for the 91. But I know the 56 is not going to turn this much diameter, and I know from running the 56, it kind of likes a 12-inch prop, 12.5, 12.25, but it's real happy with a 12. So I have some of these, the 12.5 AHMs. I'm going to drill a hub out, serrate the hub. And then what I want to try to do, because you can see the blade area is much wider, I'm going to make a 12-inch prop out of the 15. And that'll give me a real big, wide paddle blade to work with. And that'll be the first thing we can do, is see if that's going to be of any value. Because in the testing, and we can use some of our other planes, we have Strega set up with a 56, and Tradition with a 72, and the Typhoon with a 91. So we could run these on all three planes and see where that prop load is just about right. There's a plane with the normal weight of that plane should be in the low 60s. And it should fly fairly well on a 12-inch prop. Sure, with all AHMs, they need to be balanced so much, but what I want to do is carefully just take it off the back. I don't want to change the pitch, so these are made out of beechwood, and it's very easy to change the pitch before I test them. And I really am glad Richard's going to try his hand at semi-scale. I think that Stuka is going to be a great project, especially if he does it upright with a glass cowl and wheel pants. Because what will happen, we'll have a mold for all that eventually. Now what I want to do is get the same diameter, 12 inches, in that 15-inch prop. The way I tighten the props on the 4-stroke, I always like to etch the back. Where it bites into that plastic spinner and an aluminum nut, you really want to have that etched as well as you possibly can. Another thing that that have found with wood props is after a flying session, or actually it's better to do it before a flying session, take the spinner off and retighten the prop. Wood props tend to crush as time goes by. But getting that rough like that, that seems to be a big help. Now I always mark these with a unique number. Since I've done 2 already, this will be number 3. So in my notes, when I test these, now a 12-inch prop, the beauty of it is I can run it on a 56, and if it's a real loads it just a little too much, then I can try it on a 72. If I run it on a 72 and it's too light of a load, well, you can see where I'm going with this. I don't throw the props away when the load is not high enough or too high. Thing I want to do is I just rough this out, and then I have my little gauge. This just makes it so I don't have to grind all of the wood away. I can cut this off. And one thing I know that is not a good idea is that, let's say for instance you want to get it right on the edge, you make a saw cut because it leaves little splits in the wood. So I always like to cut it back maybe a 1/16 of an inch and then grind the last little bit. And it also lets me keep it 90 degrees at the same time. So I'm oversized on this tape by about 1/8 of an inch. Now typically when you take a 6 pitch and cut the tips off, as you come down to the hub, you're changing the pitch of the prop. So we'll go back to our little friendly gauge and take a look at this when we're done. See, now as exactly what I said. See how that leaves a little chunk? So you wouldn't want to have that piece missing. That last little bit we're going to grind away. We have is our little tool, and it lets me, see, this is the 12-inch mark. This is where I was making some changes to ABCs. I'm just going to grind that last little bit away and try to keep it dead 90 degrees if I can. Another trick, every other time you do it, turn it upside down, and you don't build an angle into it either. We're coming up on that, right up on that number right now. Because this is for a bigger prop, this hub is going to be oversized now. We don't need the hub this big. So what I'm going to do is, using a belt sander again, relieve this just enough that I can get the spinners that I'm using on. A rule of thumb that I've found is when a plane is highly overpowered, a good way to control that is with wide blades. Wide blades tend to be less efficient than narrow blades. Narrow blades, the trade-off is a lot of times if it's not controlled, they'll wind up more. So you're always playing this game of too much, not enough. Anyway, a wide prop like this, in theory, should have nice speed control if we get the engine load right. And what I do is I just dress off the edges for a test. I'm not even going to paint these. Guess we're going to go out and try to test these tomorrow. But this gives me a 12-inch. Probably wouldn't even fit under the spinner in fact. And so here's 2 equivalent 12-inch props. I hope one of them is going to work well on a 56, one on a 72, but if neither one of them do, because we're working on several projects at once, it'll be appropriate for one or the other. So we have a real 5-pitch and a real 6-pitch. It'll be interesting to see. I'm suspecting this is going to be a little too fast, and this is going to be a little bit too light on the load on the on the 72. And we'll assign a number to this. Well, you can't, any of the things written on a prop, after a while, when you have 100, 150 props like I do, might have even more, I don't even know. I want to assign numbers, and these are all new ones. Once I'm happy with a prop, and I feel like it has a real future in our development, well, what I'm going to want to do, of course, pretty simple. I'm going to want to paint it up, get the tips yellow or whatever, just to make it a little fancier. Some of these props that Walt Prey made me with pretty much similar blades. In fact, it looks like that's exactly, no, those are 13 that he used. And I had one that used to run good on a Tiger 60, but I kept clipping it down. It's probably too small of a diameter now. But anyway, this will be interesting testing. Props are one of the things relatively easy to work on. And once you test them, I mean, a test only costs $3, $4, $5 for a prop. If it doesn't work, there's always some application it will work on. Now, luckily, because we have plenty of these motors in stock, we won't have to take a motor out of a plane to work on it. What I want to do, brand new 72. First thing I want to see is if the same carburetor is on the 56 as on the 72. It looks identical too. And see what we can come up with in terms of, now Pat Johnson has a nice little design. I want to see if I can come up with something that I can ultimately make a mold from. And that was one of Pat's ideas too, to make a mold for these once we get a size and a shape that we're happy with. I'd also like to extend this tube further so I could put an air filter on it. Self-tapping screws, they go into the back plate of the 72, which is looks like a composite material, maybe it's plastic. But then this whole unit literally unplugs because you have an O-ring seal, a seal and an O-ring here, we want to save that. And that's O-ring sealed. Now, one of the things we've been able to do in the past is just use that bolt hole on that side, swing this over, and that gets us, see how that sticks out by the motor mounts? In fact, on our 91, we only have one screw in use. But that's the carburetor. This unplugs, there's an O-ring seal inside. Get some idea how much this carburetor weighs. It's heavier than I thought it was. It's 36 with the needle valve. So that's quite a heavy little piece. But of course it does a very sophisticated job, and it's got a relatively heavy needle valve. Now, some of the things I don't like about this, if I'm going to try to come up with something better, I'd really like the fuel pickup to be even with the needle so that the tubing doesn't have to go like a plumber's nightmare. Again, at 36 grams, we're going to look at what we can come up with that might be a little bit lighter here, and something that we possibly, when we're done with it, we can make a mold. The little tube, the OD of this tube is 330. It's 292 ID. And I want to see the reason is, you see how this is the way the carburetor is. There's my phone. Let me get that. Anyway, you got to take into account not only the swept area is a critical thing, but the restriction at the needle valve. So it's about 290 and a little bit. I'm going up on the O-ring. 290. So somewhere around there is what we'd be shooting for. But what I want to do is make it extra long too. And again, I can usually the longer intake manifolds, you can tune them for more torque at certain RPMs. There's things you can do with it. But being short like this, the problem is it's always backfiring and spitting out of the carburetor. So that's one of the things I hopefully will be able to solve. Starting from ground zero here, I don't have to be married to anything. I just happen to find this piece of tubing and it's not really the right size. I'd have to ream it out. But it's close, so I'm just trying to get an idea of, because I'm going to have to make a little plate to hold this tube in place. Or something similar to that. And actually this locks in pretty nice. I found a piece in the tune pipe stuff. This is stinger material. It's not a perfect fit. I certainly wouldn't want to have that as a slot fit, but it must mean that they make this in different diameters. Or what I could do is fill this with high temperature epoxy and then just drill it out. That would be another thing. Anyway, the idea is to kind of improvise as you go along, just try to come up with some idea, and if we can make it out of carbon fiber, it's going to be half the weight of anything of aluminum, say. I'm all around the shop for tubing and things that might be appropriate. This is just ordinary arrow shaft. It's 250 inside. It's definitely not going to be big enough. The bag that I keep all the spare tune pipe stuff, I may have a piece of tubing. Again, this is the kind of, just running around looking for, there's some tubing down here. Some pieces of stinger. The trick is you never know where you're going to find something, that's for sure. It's exactly that diameter or just something usable. So far we've got a lot of close but no cigars. They're looking at 1,000 ways of doing this. Actually making myself crazy here. What I decided to do, I took a little piece of this, the DA graphite. This is really carbon fiber, very high strength stuff and very light. Drilled 2 holes in it that match up with the back piece here. Okay, real high-tech stuff here. Now I'm going to need shorter screws when I actually go to install this. And I have this piece that I'm going to have to glue in position. And it's not a real tight fit. So what I'm going to have to do is make a rubber coupler for up here. But what I like about having this, I can make it nice and long, where I'll have an intake a lot closer to the top hole of the fuselage, and I can trim this later. I'll just leave it oversized. And I can glue this in here with, well, I want to safety wire it too. I want to have it that I have more than one way of securing this right now. And some M600, I'm making sure I get a good stuff on all the parts that I'm going to be attaching. As you can see, the way these tubes are made, and they are big arrow shafts, the problem is it's a smooth surface. I need to get it totally rough so that I can get a good bond. Now, by making it oversized like this too, I'm going to find out, just the same way you would do a tune pipe, you could take 1/4 inch of this off at a time right on a test bench until you reach your best flow. Same way they have. Remember back the 1960s, the Ram Chargers, had those big long manifolds on a V8? Well, that's the same thing we're trying to do here. Graphite. But what I decided to do, I want to put some safety wire in here too. And I got some nice safety wire from Dan Bandrak, just as a way of ensuring that this joint doesn't come apart. Secondary bond needs to be rough. You need to expose. Too shiny things, composite, never make a good bond. Whether that's on a tune pipe or venturi, it doesn't matter what. Rougher the better. Now what this is going to allow us to do, cut this off, we can run some safety wire down through here when we locate the tube, holding it in position. And I want this all dry before I do anything with the needle valve assembly. That craft safety wire that Dan Bandrak gave me for another project that we're working on. This is not copper wire that you wrap lines with anything. It's stainless steel. It's extremely strong. While I have this in here, I can adjust the length, get the exact length I want before I put the glue on here. Maybe I use JB Weld. It's something I didn't realize right in the beginning. I could have, well, I'm going to make more of these, but I could have angled this over to the middle just by using just by positioning it in this piece different, because this of course can go sideways, can go anywhere. So maybe it's good because I'll get the same needle valve location this way, and I already have the tank shimmed. But what this will allow me to do actually is replicate I can just put different holes in here. I can actually do that. Even now I can do it. I can just put one hole in there. Well, we'll let that go later. We're going to mix up some JB Weld. JB Weld this up. Now I try to smear this on with a brush, getting a good joint and cleaning it all up. But the nicest way to get a decent bond on this is just put some low heat. Like I said, low heat. That'll give you even better penetration. Now what I'm going to do is let this dry overnight, and then I'm going to fit it up to the motor and try to line up the needle valve hole. Again, this is a bigger diameter than the carburetor by quite a bit, but we're going to have a 165 needle going right across the middle of it and an air filter on the other end. So it's going to actually act a little bit like an air box. And again, we can always make one with a little smaller diameter tube. I'd like to be on the big side to start with. And we'll find out if this is going to be worth doing. But this has basically got to dry overnight now. And when that dries in the morning, well, we can go to the next step on this. Advantage of a kind of a really hot, windy day here. And what I did, I got quite a few flights with the stock 56, running a 12-inch prop, a 14.5 cut to 12. Recorded the fuel consumption, recorded the RPM, and recorded the mileage. So now what I'm going to do is take this and try to get the Venturi fit up on the 56 first, because it does interchange. I can go back and forth. And I need to do some other modifications. I need to put the hole in here and so I can prime it and whatnot. But the tank shim worked out pretty well. Just getting that even to the middle of where the needle valve is. So if we don't move the needle valve hole on the Venturi, that should work out fine. First thing I wanted to do when I get this back in the shop, I want to do an accurate weight on it. And it turns out that it's been retrimmed, and I don't have a way of putting a cowling on yet. And I've had to add some tip weight and some other changes that I've made to the trim. I put a much lighter spinner on. By the way, these work real well on the 56. And these are the lightest of any spinner I've ever seen. This is by far the lightest. There's no back plate at all. Trouble is, they come from Hobby Lobby, and I don't know if you can buy them anymore, but I think Joe has a couple of them. Anyway, it did work well. It worked well with the electric start. It worked well. We were practicing flipping starting it, because obviously in F2B, you got to stick your finger in there. Anyway, pretty much the same result here. The thing that was real nice is the same prop works on the 72 with a little bit more diameter, and I'm going to make a set of these with even a little less. This is a full 12-inch. It's a 14.5 cut to 12. Now what I did, this motor on the PowerMaster fuel, 5%, runs about 10,000. It'll run 99, it'll run 10, it'll run 10.1. It runs in that range. What I want to try to do is slow the RPM down a little bit, because I think the motors are happier at a little bit lower RPM. But the thing that was important is it looks like I've got, even with the metal tank, the old metal tank, the shim worked out pretty close enough that we could fly the plane. The other nice thing now is I always try to record this, just for my own information. There's where the needle valve is. It's about 2 3/8 out. Because a lot of times you wind up going in on a needle, and what happens is you wind up getting these, overruns and stuff. Now this is about as dead predictable as I could make it. Just have the carburetor wired open, but now I want to pull it all apart, and I want to try to set this up with that Venturi. But we're starting out. And I'm going to know more after I retrim, because I'm going to retrim the tip. I'm going to retrim this bird. I'm going to send you to live with Paul Walker. I want to retrim this, and if you're really bad, you go to Bob Gieske. Now that's really going to get... Now look how good he is now. Anyway, I know Bob Gieske did have a pet bird at one time. He was telling me that
flew out the car window or something. Pete, you're not flying away. But anyway, I'm trying to keep track of the weight for another reason. Is what I'd like to do is this: if we are able to go to the team trials, and that, again, that's always a 50-50 here with the way everything is in my family. What I'd like to have, of course, is a spare plane, and the spare plane to have the same engine. And it looks like what we're going to try to do is work with the 72 and the 56 and kind of have this little fly-off. The 56 is a little lighter, so in this case, getting that weight out of the nose gets this plane down to 66 ounces. And that, to me, that's about where this plane should be. Probably an ounce or two lighter would be nice, but that's a reality that we have to live with. It's a little bit, and it's been repaired. Keep in mind, this has been a test plane for about 94, 6 years, and we've had a lot of motors in here, a lot of different things. But the 56 Sato is one of the nicer, friendlier packages that we've had in here. I had wanted to get the tank up maybe a 1/16 of an inch, but I see we're out of shim, so we're basically going to have to live with that for this part of the test. The other choice we would have is to take the pads out and make thinner pads. Well, right now, because we're still in the testing process, what I'm going to do, though, is try to adjust the needle valve a 1/16 of an inch off center. And then we'll find out if that makes any difference at all. I don't think it does. It never did in the past. And one of the things that's nice about this particular plane for testing is the whole motor just comes right out. This little gizmo worked out well, the little tube that's bent back. But for right now, I want to see if it's going to be practical to use that manifold. If it isn't, I'm just going to make another one up. I had wanted to make two, one for the 72, one for the 56, and if possible, I'd like to have them interchangeable, but I'm not sure that's going to be possible right now. Because this is a centered manifold, the other one is kind of a straight. What I'd wanted to do is come up with one. You see how this is a different back plate, because it's a different size motor, but this is movable, and the holes are interchangeable. So I'm going to see now, that'll be an interesting test, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this adaptable, which my original plan was, to make one that I could go from motor to motor with. To keep the carb, and a little note in there telling me how far out the needle was the last time I went, because this will complement my little notebook of what power setting we had. See, since we've in essence made we've made a bigger carburetor, I'm sure it's going to somehow have to be sleeved down, or we're going to have to do. In other words, we're starting on a big side. That's what I'm really trying to accomplish. Now, with the 91 and the 72, we always downsized the carburetor because we always had them in planes where they were very overpowering. That's not true with the 56. The 56 needs to run. It basically always runs wide open. What I wanted to find is, so these are two different diameters, and I wanted to find a piece of tubing that would go over the bigger of the two and the smaller of the two as a connector. And because this is just a temporary thing, if we're real happy with the way this works, we could JB weld this together, or what I think is going to happen, we're going to make a part like this out of some brass tube that's probably going to sleeve nice and tight over this. But for right now, this is going to give us a good test, and what we're trying to do in essence is up the power on this motor anyway. This will be a good way of testing it. But this is why I keep a bag with all these pieces of tubing, because you can see how handy they are, and these are all high temperature tube. Now that, you can see, is a little bit too big, even though it fits on the other side relatively well. Well, you could also use one of those Stinger guys. Let's see if we have one of them. There we have. The piece of the high temperature rubber that looks like it's going to be just the right diameter, and I'll either wire this or zip tie it once I get this in position. To drill a needle valve hole here, I'm going to try to vary it down a 1/16 of an inch. I don't want to make it exact level because I can't shim the tank anymore. So I'm going to just come down here a 1/16 off center. Now, one of the things I've done is as I'm assembling this, I did a pressure test, blocked off all three of the holes and put a negative pressure on this. Make sure I don't have an air leak anywhere around here. But keep in mind, this is something that's relatively crude. We don't need to spend $100 on tooling, and we don't need to make a 2-hour trip down to the machine shop just to make a part to test.
And we should be able to compare this against the ones that Pat Johnson designed, and that's what I'm really primarily trying to do, because I want to see, I remember on those cars in the 60s had that long intake, always developed more torque. Anyway, we'll have something to compare it to. Now this has to dry. Now after making this little clamp up, I need to make sure this is good and solid. And I'm going to put a zip tie here and a zip tie here just to ensure that there's no air leakage there. One of our other experiments that we want to try, and we're not going to get to do it today, of course, we want to set this up like the Laser somehow, and I've tried to figure a way that I could buy an extra intake manifold and maybe somehow attach it with a clamp here, similar to the way the Laser is, just to see if, now I've lowered this needle valve about a 1/16, but I don't have any high hopes that that's going to change, and I really can't shim the tank anymore, so it's something we're going to have to live with. This is the way I'd really like to attach it, but you can see that's built right into the engine. In fact, this, I didn't even loosen it up, but this actually comes right off. Even the muffler comes off. You can see how they have that in with O-rings. Well, maybe we could come up with something. We need to make a bracket to hold it. Again, it's just one of the things, and when we get a chance to, as soon as we're done with the team trials, assuming we go, don't go, whatever, the next thing is going to be to put this in tradition, and that will tell us if this is, moving this up and down really never changed the tank shim, at least on the Max 70 it didn't. Now I don't know, if we put this in a plane and this runs the same with the same tank shim as the normal motors, well, we certainly can't have the tank here. Well, that's one of the things we're going to have to, we'll try to learn from this experience. So now it's time to retrofit it back into the plane. And I'm going to try to fit this. I want to try to figure out exactly where I'm going to have to grind this hole, and it looks like it's going to have to be pretty far back. Have to be almost in the middle of the tank shim. Now, this is the tank that I'm taking out of there, and it's a 4.5 ounce. And I want to get some idea of just how much. It's 55. Now you can see the tank that we're going to replace it with, the carbon tank, is actually 1.5 ounces bigger. So we go from 55 it's 1 ounce lighter. 55 to 25, it cuts the weight in half. The carbon tank is half the weight. So that now knocks another ounce out of the nose. And we're going to eventually, as soon as I get a chance to hook up with Jimmy, we're going to make one. Since we know it needs to be this big, and I have bodies already made, I can make one exactly this length. But in the meantime, I want to run this one just simply because it's lighter. This will get the plane down. This should get it down to 65, and we should be able to knock 1 ounce off of that carburetor. So we should be, when we're all done, we should be down to 64. Significant is with any 4-stroke, it puts the same amount of weight up in the front, and getting the weight out of the nose and moving it. In other words, if this were a pipe motor, it'd be the same weight with the bird. But the pipe would be back here, and it'd be balancing like a seesaw with all the weight up in the front. Getting weight out of the front is really a productive thing, and it gets the total weight of the plane down. I like to have all the parts that I can snap them right back in at the field. If any of these tests prove to be non-productive, I can go right back, put the carburetor on, go right back, put the original tank in a matter of minutes. Next test, we have the carbon fiber tank, even though it's oversized, and we have gotten it down to 63.5 ounces. By putting all this on, I just weighed it very accurately. So what that's going to do is it'll move the CG back just a little bit, but the total weight now is 63.5 instead of 66. And the next time I get a chance to do a day session, I'm going to try to make something that looks like a cowling here. I'm not sure that the other one is so oil soaked. I mean, these planes are really, really old. Anyway, what we need now is a test day. Now, in between the raindrops today, and I do mean raindrops, I couldn't even take the camera out of the car. I didn't want anything to get wet. We had a very interesting test day, and I learned an awful lot that I'd like to share with you right off the bat. First off, the gasket between the manifold that held this together was a high temperature rubber, and it lasted fine. It lasted about 3/4 of a gallon of fuel with 4 ounce per flight, 4 to 4.5 ounces per flight, and that looks like the amount we're going to need. So this part worked out fine. And it was hilarious. I wish I had this on. I wish I had a bird. Get out of here. Go play with Paul Walker. This was really funny when this happened. I had the air filter on here. I cut the hole in Strega, and I had this real nice green air filter on here. I primed the engine, and when you over prime it, and it's cold, usually it'll run backwards. And I had without even thinking. See, what happens is there's raw exhaust now, and it turns the intake into the muffler. And what it did, it just burned a hole right in that air filter. So that's not going to be a practical thing, even though I would like to have had the air filter just to keep from sucking bugs and things in there and whatever. I had thought that was going to be the answer. Well, it wasn't. Another thing I tried, I had one of these, and I'll put this on the video. I have one of these little atomizing bottles that Paul Walker was using at the Nats on his B-17. I'm sure you've all seen them. Well, it just turns out my wife already uses that medicine. So I've got dozens of them around here. If anybody wants one, can send them when the medicine is relatively expensive too. But anyway, so the first thing we learned for right now, until we find a fireproof, flame-proof, something air filter, that's important. We also learned another thing. The original Venturi and our Venturi, which both work into the same size pipe, and I assume it's the pipe, I'm assuming this, but I don't even know, that is the overall restriction. In other words, you're not going to get a real gain, a big gain, any more than, I'll just give an analogy, in the old days if you had a 327 Chevy and you had a 2-barrel carburetor, well, when you put a 4-barrel on it, went faster. When you put 2 4-barrels on, it didn't go any faster, it just didn't have any low-end power. So what's happened with ours, because we made it not only bigger in diameter, it's also longer, the total length, because what I was trying to do is replicate some of that ram air effect, and I thought maybe that'd be fun to try. Well, what happened is exactly the opposite of what I wanted to have happen. With the test prop that we've been using to fly Strega, the original Venturi's turning right around 10,000, and you can squeeze it up to 10.1 or 10.2, but then it goes over lean and maneuvers. But our big was going 10.5. Well, that would all be fine and dandy if we had a pipe motor or something like that where we wanted to just completely push it to the limit. That's the whole idea of doing this, is that you don't have motors pushed to the limit. So what happened is, what this number is telling me is that I've made the diameter too big. So the next thing, the next phase, and this is the way I evolve, all the things I do evolve, is I'm going to take the pipe, and I'll have to do this, maybe get down a hobby shop. I'll have to measure up that Sato manifold and get some brass tube that's pretty much the same, or maybe one size I could sleeve it over and solder it on there. Again, I don't know, but the other thing I did not think of, and I don't know why I left this out, this carbon tube that we use probably would deteriorate in time, and of course we don't want that to happen. So the next thing is either to have Jimmy, and Jimmy's machining up the Pat Johnson ones now, or maybe use brass tube. Now I like the idea of making it long. I'm not going to abandon that yet. The only problem is I know this one is too big, so what I need to do is make a compromise. I'll measure this one, and try to get a brass tube that's right about in the middle of that. So I'll still get a gain, maybe I'll get a 100 RPM gain or whatever, but I'm not going to get a 500 RPM gain turns it into something that you would then need really low pitch props, things that I don't want to resort to. Now I learned one thing really significant here, and it's a trim thing. And it's not something that I really learned, I had to relearn it. And I've done this over and over with Strega, with other motors, and in all different combinations, but just pulling out that 2.5 ounces of weight out of the plane, dropping it from 66 to 63.5, it just turns Strega into lightning bolt corners, just completely, because of course all the weight's out of the nose, so the CG gets moved back. I thought I might have, just as a miracle, is
because it's raining so much, I may get a day to put Miss Ashley's wing, tack it back together, see if that's usable. Started off with Strega at one point in time, and it was originally built with a Tiger 60, which then was used to test other engines. It eventually wound up with a PA 51, a Jet 61, and all of the pipe engines, of course, added weight to the bottom. I'm just putting this on here just for a reference point. Now, I've always kept notes of where the handle setting wound up with various CGs, so I could go back. In other words, I always have about 6 adjustments, 5 or 6 on each handle, and I always mark the handle with the plane that I'm flying for that particular time. Now, what I thought would happen, and I was shocked to find out this wasn't happening the way I thought it was, is I had replaced all of this hardware with the same total weight, but now it was all concentrated up here. And so when I test flew the plane the first time, it was relatively nose heavy, and I had to open the handle spacing up as wide as, it just didn't feel like it should. Well, a couple of things made it possible. Getting rid of the aluminum spinner, getting that real light Hobby Lobby spinner on, that was a big step in the right direction. Another big step, getting 1.5 ounces out of the carbon tank. So in effect, what I did, I got weight out of this, all out of the front. This part here is on the other side of the seesaw, so whatever part of the pipe is behind the CG, you have to take that into account that you remove the same amount of weight from up here because it's on a seesaw, it's on a pendulum. But, having said that now the whole handle geometry changed. Started this whole test, I was at the setting that I had with the Jet 60, which was as wide as I could possibly make it, and with the CG at a spot that I knew with the pipes was relatively accurate. I was happy with that CG. Now, what I did find out, putting the carbon tank in and that real light spinner, I've closed 2 notches on each side, which is a dramatic change. So now I'm at a setting where I'm actually using, and here's the gain. See, this is all fine and dandy. It's nice that this works out. But there's a gain here. There's an aerodynamic gain that you don't realize. Here's what happens. If you can wind up doing this, on your wing and tail, what this relates to is less, instead of deflecting the flaps that much, maybe you're deflecting them this much. So by having less flap deflection, you're wasting more power. You're using less power to turn the plane. So in essence, what happens is, when you go all the way back to this, with the CG now with all these lightweight parts, what we're really doing is deflecting the flaps and elevators a lot less. And that's where the gain from this whole thing. And if we can get another 3/4 of an ounce or so out of that Venturi. What I did at the end of the day, I just wound up putting the stock carburetor back on the plane. And that, of course, is about a 10-minute just turn it around. Because this being too big, maybe the appropriate size for a 72, maybe appropriate size for a 91, that we don't know about. But we'll certainly save that part, but we do want to make one as one of the next test things with some tubing so that we can finalize. I want to finalize what eventually at least learned something. And I hope we're going in an appropriate direction where we're going to learn more and more so we can share it with the people like Pat Johnson, Paul, Bob Gieske, that are trying to do this. And if we join all the knowledge together, we can get this done a lot quicker. And the same way, by the way, when the guys started with the pipe engines and when they started with the Tiger 60s, hell, when they started with Fox 35s, getting them to run appropriately, it took years. Back then, people didn't share anything. They didn't share their lunch. Nowadays, we're able to do things in a time window, and actually when we go to Middlesex this Sunday, this will mark the anniversary of 1 year that I've been working with 4-strokes. And in 1 year, I've learned enough to at least plow the thing into the top 5, if not make it totally competitive or as competitive as it could be. But we are learning, we are sharing, and I'm really hoping we're going to, by the end of this flying season, have this done, because what do we want to do with this when it's all done? Put it in the B-25 and have 2 of them running very reliably.
I thought what I'd show in the video too is I want to just see if this wing is repairable, because it's a take-apart plane. It's monumentally easier than the repair we did on Mike's plane, where we had to fix it in the body. And the shame is, one of the things I had thought about doing, if I make a mold for a Miss Ashley wing, well, because I already have a fuselage buffed out, I already have another fuselage, and I already have a tail. If I made two wings, two carbon fiber wings, I would in essence hand paint them. I would have two complete Miss Ashleys. Now, once the wing is out, I can really survey the damage here. One of the things, the inside wing didn't take any hits at all. There's a couple of dings from bending the gear. There's some little dings around here. Actually, the worst part is in the back of this wing, but because we have, look, my carbon fiber flaps cracked, broken, well, we'll just make new flaps, that's all. Or we could even use the original flaps that we had before we had carbon fiber. But I want to try to lay this out on the table and see if I can even just tack glue it together and see if this is going to be a practical repair. But again, anytime you have one wing in one hand and one wing in the other hand, it's very intimidating to a lot of people, even me. One of the first things, anytime I have this type of a repair, of course the best thing is to never have to do this. But I want to get it roughly in position and see if any parts are missing. Again, ordinary Scotch tape. You don't have to make this too fancy right now. This will allow us to just see if we have all the big pieces, because we're going to have to build some reinforcement inside. And I can kind of use this as a little bit of a rubber band to get this together. The other thing too is because I'm going to glue this from the inside out, it'll allow me to, the CA will stop right at the wood, and so I can get my hand in there right now. So this will be of some value. When I want to take the tape off, I'll heat it with a hairdryer. Again, when a crash like this happens, the best thing is just put it away for a couple of days, because first of all, if you're emotionally involved in it, at least I am. And sometimes you make the wrong decision, like Lou Dutka, when he had a crash, he went and put a match to it. And then a couple days later said, it was the last of the bell cranks, the fuel tanker. Well, you want to just think it through a little bit. Now I've got this joint. Now, of course, I can spread it the other way, but a joint just temporarily holding that. Step one. Any further, it probably would pay to take the gear out, just so I can lay this flat on the pad. Again, if we didn't have wingtips on, we could put the rods right back in here, but I'm not sure that's practical unless you want to make new wingtips or repair the wingtips. Again, one thing nice about this landing gear system that we've developed over the years, you absolutely never worry about the gear coming out of the wing. This upside down, I'm doing the same thing here, is trying to line up the sheeting. Now, in a roundabout way, I was hoping this plane that we made for Woody with the carbon wing would not be so successful, because now I'm already thinking about molding. Because see, now just pretend I had a mold for this wing already. Well, I already have the wing. You'd already be done. One day into it, you'd be finished. But balsa wood is, oh man, it's like a nightmare when it's in piece. Now, putting everything under tension, and then I'm stretching this and using it to pull the joint together. Now, with this, I can get my hand in here to a certain degree, and line that up. And you can look inside and see that it looks like it's lined up as well as we can expect it. So I guess the first thing is I'm going to drop a few drops of CA down in here. and just let this tack together. One thing nice, because it is the outboard wing, if we add a half an ounce or so in weight, the whirl's not going to come crashing to an end. When you repair an inboard wing, you double the weight because you have to add it back in the outer wing for a tip weight too, so we're not going to be subject to that, hopefully. Now the idea of this is, if we didn't have the tape on there, what would happen? The CA would be coming out and ruining the paint. I can just roll that, let the glue roll in place. Wait for it to kick normally. Just give it a few minutes to kick.
What I want to do is get in there, and on the inside, make a piece of 16 sheeting that'll cover, see the crack in there? I want to go right over the whole piece, so in other words, I'll have a doubled up leading edge piece. Brace is in there. I'm just going to flood that with thin CA. Make sure it's down all the way. Now the other piece that looked marginal here, I want to repair around the horn. And the easiest way to do this, because the tape gives you a little bit of time to work. And again, we're playing with the house's money here. Because if the wing doesn't trim out right or something's wrong with it, well, we got to make a new wing anyway. And because it's a take-apart plane, that makes it a lot easier. Now we got to start fitting in these trailing edge pieces, and I hope I have them all. Temporary thing, I can take this silk span. I can't do it with a big piece. Just to hold everything in place. This will hold it in place while I'm working on it. We're going to have to make some, it looks like we're going to have to make some ribs anyway, and some trailing edge parts. Save all these little pieces, because you never know what piece you're going to need. Just think how many hours of sanding and buffing it took to get that finished like that. Little piece here, I think we can just tack it together. Let that dry, and we're going to try to fit that in. Like a big jigsaw puzzle. I guess it'll be easier if we get all the old finish off. Just be easier since we're going to have to sand it all down. And this might get to be a little time consuming because I want to try to get it down to bare wood so that the silk span patches are going onto fresh wood. Now with everything tacked in, now we need to get in here. First off, we need to get some of this silk span off. I don't know at this time just how much of this has to come off, but I know I'll need this off. So now that lets me look in there. Yeah, there's still some broken ribs. Now luckily we have a pattern for all these ribs. What I want to do is get in through the trailing edge and get a splice under there so that there's a double piece the same way there is in the leading edge underneath. So it'll give me some support to work on that. But patching up the pieces that are missing in this trailing edge. Now, you might think it'd probably be easier just to cut one piece out and replace this whole piece. The thing I don't like about that is this is holding it, in other words, I don't see any real gaps here, so I know this is kind of holding me in alignment. So if for no other reason, and we'll be able to do the cosmetic part of this without a problem. Now what I want to do is get in here from the bottom. See how I'm holding this up? A lot of times when you're doing this, the way you get in trouble is you try to make it too pretty. When we get time to sand this all out, then we'll worry about getting it even. Right now it's integrity that we're looking for.
We got to do the same thing here. Can't get in underneath. And we're going to have to make a piece of trailing edge here. I'm going to have to figure a way of getting in this way. Because I don't want to change the way this is lined up. Yeah, I can just cut this out is what I'm going to do. And I'll put a new piece in there when I'm done. And a lot of this right in the beginning, even if you remember looking at the Strega repair, looks real butchery at some points. But as long as you get all the integrity right, then doing the cosmetic stuff, very predictable how to get cosmetic stuff right. I'm not so sure we're going to be able to get it this way. Okay, what I need to do is get a nice long blade in here. Get this up in here. Because it's these pieces, we're going to replace those ribs anyway. It's these pieces here that are keeping everything in alignment for right now. Now you would think, at least right now, as this piece dries, we've got a good chance of having the alignment right. That we haven't built a big twist into the wing. Because we don't have any gaps. We've put all the pieces back. So as awful as this looks right now, I think we've got the integrity part of it down. And we're going to get rid of these cap strips. And we can get rid of this one right now. I don't even know if this one is going to pay to try to put back in. And this one may be okay. Step is to get rid of, starting with this one, get rid of the cap strip, put a new cap strip in here, and then make up these two ribs, which are going to be, I'll have to look at the plans. Because it's the outer wing, I don't even have to cut the holes for the lead outs. Now what's always a good idea here, if we can get it, try to get this lined up. And a lot of times you luck out in the fact that you can just get this to go right in. I always make them just a little bit oversized and then press them in. To make these two ribs up only from here to here. You know, how handy is it to have this? Really handy, in fact. And we may need the lettering things and whatever. Who knows what we're going to need. What we need is a mold for a carbon fiber wing. Boy, I'll tell you, the more I think about carbon fiber wings. Anyway, we need 3 and 4. It ought to be pretty easy to figure out which 3 and 4 are. There they are. So now I just need to make a copy of these. Just this center section. We have one really prime piece of sea grain left, so we're going to have to be real careful about getting this positioned on here, but I want to keep the ribs straight. I want to have the grain on an angle. Like I said, I don't need to... That's the only piece of the rib I'm going to need. I measured to see how far out I'd have to make it. We just need to tack glue that in place, put the cap strips on, tack, same thing, make rib number 5, tack glue, put the cap strips on, and then we're ready to start doing the cosmetic part of this repair. We need to work and build a little block to fill in that gap in the trailing edge. In any little spot, like there's a spot right there, just make a little cork, some reverse angles, and pack it right in, and we'll be ready to do the sanding. Point on, we're just putting oversized pieces, because we're going to block sand them right down in. Same thing with all these chunks, and rather than replace this actually has a very good jig. I can just clean this out and make little corks that are going to fit in there, just like a cork in a bottle, and then dress it all off. This is the part that you really don't have to spend any time. It's just going to fill that in. And it doesn't have to be real fancy right now. We just have to get the structural part of this right. So we've got plenty of strength down in there. That'll shave right down. As long as you have a draft angle on all this, it's not real important at this point in time to get a perfect fit. And as sloppy as this looks, it works. Sometimes even a spot like this can be dressed right in these peats. I don't even bother trying to line up the grain, although it would be nice if the grain was all in the same spot, because I'm going to very carefully block sand this whole area, and that part of it is going to take some time. I really don't want to spend more time than I have to here just to rough this in, but I'm always pressing on it to see if there are any soft spots. Any soft spots? And this is like, I don't know, 80 grit paper or something, 100 grit.
It's you.
Now you'll see there's a little spot we missed here. Let's take a little chunk of balsa. Let's see if you can see this on the close-up lens here. There's a little spot. As soon as that kicks, kind of shave some of it off.
I guess love is really blind. This world.
I just put a little bit of vinyl spackle on these really bad spots. While I'm letting that dry, I pulled off the Scotch tape. I reinforced this joint and just knock it back down to flat with a sanding block.
No one gets.
Is when you're doing cosmetic work, you can make it real easy on yourself. Where there's already a finish, that's a relatively hard material. Wherever there's raw balsa, that's soft, so you really never can get the things to marry up. Well, what I've done is go over everything with thin CA. Now I've just very lightly block sanded this. Now it would seem like if we put about 5 coats of this on, what will happen is we'll harden up the wood and we'll be able to blend 2 hard surfaces in. But if you try to do a soft wood into a hard paint surface, you're almost never going to get it. It's going to be very frustrating. And if you do get it, it's going to take 20 times the amount of time to get it. Boy, the more I work on this, the more I wish I had the mold for the wing done. You can bet I'm going to do that over the winter. It's the kind of insurance policy, being able to make a wing in a day. A couple of days anyway. And get out of this mode of where you're working on things forever. Hey, now, just let that kick off. The cap strips, I'll put a second coat on. Go right out over the painted areas. Now, if this was new construction, we wouldn't really bother doing this because it would all be soft surfaces. But in this case, that's not true. It's half hard, half soft.
After you were gone, there was still some stardust on my
You take like 320 or 220 paper. And now these raw areas are stronger than the wood around them, number one. And like I said, it'd be a good idea if I answered the phone. Next thing, I'm going to take this out in the garage, put about 5 coats of clear dope on it, and get it ready for tissue. Now today what I did, I have about 5 coats of clear dope on that. I'm warming up the tape because I want to get the flap, the one flap that is not destroyed. Always warm the tape before you take it off. As soon as you warm it up even a little bit. So what's nice about having, because one flap is broken and one isn't, I'm just going to put the original flaps that we made for the plane. I'll save this carbon flap for a prototype. By the way, it seemed like the plane had a lot more corner with the carbon flaps, but to make another carbon flap right now is out of the question, since we're trying to prepare for, well, if we can't. Look at this, he's eating my tape. Hey, get away from that tape. Go any further on this repair, or really on any repair, I want to totally degrease. Now the reason for this is because you're touching this, you're touching parts of the model from this point on after we tissue it, and after we touch it, the grease is on your finger and you're just spreading that grease all over the place. So rather than contaminate everything, I'm just using plenty of Sikkens M600, get it totally degreased, the wing degreased. By the way, we still have one. Amazing. Of all the things I didn't want to break too, the only 2 parts that broke on this crash are the parts that I can't replace conveniently. Something that's a little, well, less labor intensive than what I want is I really should go out another bay or 2, but wherever you end it, that last bay doesn't want to stay tight. And what I was trying to do was not have to repaint the word Miss Ashley, because you can tell you could imagine how many hours that is. And in this case, I would only have to repaint the U. So that's a significant saving. And what I decided to do after thinking about this overnight is I'm going to call John Duncan this morning and order up a solid foam core so that I can make a mold for the carbon wing, because I can see already, this is already too much work. If I had the mold, I could just be done with it. Even by the hinge lines here, I had to do a repair, but luckily that's on the bottom. Now, not having to paint as much of this as I really have to, because this is not going to be the permanent wing. I can see now, over the winter or in the next, as soon as we get the weather, we lose the weather here. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to make a mold for this wing, because I have the other fuselage. And it's something I should have done, years ago, but as it came to be, it's a hard lesson to learn these things, but once you learn them, dope is all dried up. I'm just gonna, and I've got about 5 coats. I put more than I really need on here. I'm taking a sanding block and I want to make sure I got the cap strips even, because once the tissue's on, it's really hard to bring these 2 surfaces together, and if I go through in a spot, I'll hit it with the thin CA. That hitting it with the thin CA is a tip worth its weight in gold. Here's where you usually have the worst problem, is where you have to build up, and that feels pretty good. And again, I'm going to try to save the Ashley lettering. Again, we'll find out when this is done if I've saved it. But I'm going to order up the cores from John Duncan and make a mold for this wing, because I can, if I make 2 wings, and I can do that relatively quickly, even though it's a lot of money for the material, I'll then have 2 Miss Ashleys, which is, right now I wish I had 3. Having replacement parts, really important when you're trying to keep an Air Force maintained. Now the other thing, just going to carefully go over this.
Let's see if I have any high spots. Like I said, I'm going to have Peeps answer the phone so I can get something done today. Look at this wrinkle. See, it's starting to wrinkle in this bay, but if I do this bay, then I really have to paint this whole work. It's really getting to be a hard decision here.
Well, we're going to try to cheat the system. But in the meantime, I'm definitely, and I said it before, the experience we had last year, now that the plane that we made, the carbon copy, has a whole year of flying, and many, many people have flown it under all kind of conditions. I don't see any reason we have to build balsa wood wings anymore. It's really, unless there's a special need. Basically, the thing you save is the work. It's this right here, getting all these, and again, getting all these cap strips edged. Now, I had originally thought at one time a plan would be, when I saw how this was busted up, I would strip the whole wing. And, oh man, now you think about all this lettering and everything. Oh, this lettering was very labor intensive. I still have the templates, but boy, if I could avoid doing it, maybe we can make the word Miss Ash E or something. Oh, we're gonna find. Oh, Gary Levitz is probably rolling over in his grave while I do this. So we're gonna get this tissued today. Still raining out there. I can't believe it. Won't be able to put any real paint on other than get the tissue on and get. And I'm doing it with the dehumidifier and the air on while Karen's away at work. Yeah, we're almost ready to tissue this. This is the edge. I want to get this edge as neat as possible. I need to go out over here. Now the trick here that I've found, don't put any dope on the cap strips when you're doing a patch. The idea is to try to get this panel shrunk eventually, and I have a little trick for doing that once we get the tissue on. And the biggest trick of all is if I will recover that outer wing. It seems like one of the things happens to me is when I start doing a repair, I kind of get into it just a little bit, and I'm even thinking about it while I'm sleeping. I'm thinking, how can I do that? How can I do that? Because to me, it's very rewarding to bring a plane back to life. I can imagine how real doctors feel, like people that really do incredibly good things, not modeling things. And one of the goals we have in this repair is we want to keep it cost effective. I don't want to spend so much time that I could have built a new wing. I'd like to keep it as, well, practical as possible. Now, a little bit of Windex on the tissue. I already have the tissue cut to size. Not soaked, just wet. I want to get it right on that cap strip if I can. Of course, it's nice if we had Mike or one of the professional assistants that I've had from time to time. And the main thing is to get this edge down. The rest of it is all toast if that doesn't go down right. And in this case, because we're going over some dope that's about a year old, can really soak it on here. And if I wind up getting this wrinkle out in the final thing, one of the things I'll try to do is, when we get the whole thing done, I'll try to soak it with some retarder and get it to re-shrink. Anyway, one of the things again, I'm using my bare hands to press it all down. And when I flip this over, I'll have to roll up some towels so this part doesn't touch the table. I'm trying to do it so both sides are wet at the same time. You really never want to cover, even though at this part in the wing it probably wouldn't warp, but it's just a good habit to get into. Put plenty of dope on there and press it down. You got a little wrinkle here. And nothing on the cap strips right now until we get this a little bit tighter, let the silk span dry. I really do get a I don't know, some kind of a subliminal thrill out of saving planes. Like an illness. And when you fly, like when I flew Strega after repairing that wing, the first time out when I flew it, it was like a feeling I can't tell you. The goal we're shooting for here is that the wing doesn't warp or twist or anything like that, and I think we'll accomplish that. Because this actually is a great plane for doing our testing of 56s. I really wish this didn't happen. I would be a couple of weeks ahead on my program, my test program. You have to flip it over, bring it up on 2 towels, and tissue the other side, and then let it all dry. We have about 10 coats of clear dope on here, and I put them on about an hour apart. It's still gummy. Now this would be really hard to dry sand, so what I'm going to try to do is wet sand it. And I'm going to try to use 320 paper. Again, I'm not trying to make a show plane out of this now. I just like to get it back to being a functional plane, because again, we still would like to use this as the rest of the flying season progresses. We still have time to test motors in this plane. Now, as ugly as this is and as short of a dry time as we've had, this is what I really appreciate about using Brodak dope. And we'll use some M600 just to see how it's going to cut. I just like to flatten it out. And if I don't go through in any spots, I'm going to try to tonight, the last thing tonight, go out in the garage and get one of the colors back masked. Now that's only been drying about 24 hours, and already we can block sand it out. I'm going to be real careful because I don't have any extra around the rib bays or any of that. Try to get it all flattened out as smooth as possible. After sanding this out, believe me, this was time consuming. Because we're not using any filler, I was just using coat after coat of dope, and of course you can do a whole plane that way, but then there's a lot of sanding. We got enough dope on here, I think, that we'll be able to shoot a coat of the Miss Ashley red, and I'm not going to bother trying to make it too fancy here. Just get it the minimum amount of red that it will take to cover that. We just did this before dark. That's going to dry overnight. We're leaving an air conditioner running overnight just to try to get some of the humidity out of the air. That's step 1 on the repaint. And you really do get a little satisfaction out of seeing this piece by piece come back together as an aeroplane. Our first color is totally dried up. And there's probably a better way I could have done this. I just decided to fill everything with coat after coat of clear dope because, again, what's going to happen is I'm going to make a mold for this wing over the winter. This is really just a temporary thing. And I also like to do these things just to see if I can find little new ways of doing them or something that would improve it. So what I did, I put the tape out over the last letter, so if I decide I need to put the last letter in there. Also, painting that, I did make a mistake here that I wanted to mention. I should have backmasked where that white shield would be because it's really impossible to paint white over red. It always bleeds through, especially the Brodak red that has Miss Ashley has all the pigment in it. Now see, I was just touching this with my fingers. I haven't started working in the shop yet today. My hands are still greasy from doing the dishes. But look how that leaves a fingerprint. And if you're doing that, I better put fisheye killer in all the paint from this point on. Now I'm going to just backmask some of the stripes up here one by one. Try to get these painted if I can today. I feel like, well, if I can get most of this paint work done, maybe by the end of the week we can be flying this guy again. And it won't be a real pretty repair. This is a quick and dirty repair, but it's something that, in essence, I've salvaged a plane that otherwise would have been, it'd be sitting over there with no fuselage, with no wing in the body. Gonna take Sickens M600. Because don't forget, I do the dishes in the morning. Real men do the dishes. And try it from this point on, because here's the double problem. The plane has already been exposed to oil. There's oil in the hinge pockets and stuff. So every step of the way, I'm going to try to wipe this down with the Sickens. And now we'll get ready to pull off I can leave all the foil on, just pull off the next color. Again, a little bit of heat on the tape ensures that we're just not going to pull off the original finish. Good John Brodak trick. Now again, what I'll do is I'll wipe this off. You just never can keep this stuff too clean when you're doing a used part. Now I'm not trying at this point in repair, I'm not trying to get perfect paint lines and everything edged out, because it's not, if I do that, I'll lose the rest of the flying season. And since we're ultimately going to just make a mold for this wing, this will ultimately become a spare wing. Now because this has only been drying about 10 hours, I'm making sure I don't pull up the original paint as I backmask the next color. And this is pretty self-explanatory, backmasking color after color after color. But boy, it is a wonderful feeling when you have something repaired. And the first time this plane will be back in the air, assuming we make it, first time this goes back in the air, boy, will that be a thrill. It's really gonna work for me well here. I can paint the dark blue. This is insignia blue. Because if a little bit of overspray gets on a black, I don't care. As soon as this dries, I'll just backmask this and paint the black. I'll have both of these done in approximately 10-15 minutes. Handicap to this whole thing is the humidity in the air. So what I'm going to try to do, and I got up really early this morning, it's not even light out, turn the air conditioners and the humidifier on. I'm going to try to do most of this with an airbrush and just get it just a minimum amount of spray and then put it right over by the air conditioner to try to speed this up. Again, the thing that's nice about Brodak dope is you can do this in real quick steps. It's not like let it dry overnight. Let it dry every time you do something, you got to let it dry overnight. It's about backmasking over 1/8" tape. Is you can lay each stripe out. I don't know if I put this on. I always rub the tape up on a relatively clean T-shirt. Of course, as the day goes on, it's not it's not clean at all. And even the last piece like this, I'm just tracing it out because I can see right through the green tape. We don't care what goes on under the gear blocks. Okay, we're ready to paint. That Wilnamora airbrush is real handy for this because we don't need to do a lot of backmasking. I made the paint real thin because I want to get a really good bond. I'm going to have to backmask over this when I shoot the white, so I don't want this to peel up. If I put this on too dry, it'll have a tendency to peel up. And this is just one of those patience things. You're not going to get it with an airbrush. It's not going to cover in one coat. Boy, if we didn't have a dehumidifier and an air conditioner, we'd be dead in the water right now. We'd absolutely not be able to do this work. Or we'd have to go to some environment where we could control the humidity. This has been the most humid, hot summer I've ever remembered. Got the two colors sprayed, and you can see this is the kind of humidity I'm dealing with here, and that is with about 20% retarder, so I'm going to really be careful. I touched up that spot on the back where the hinge had pulled out. I think this is going to be dry. Yeah, I think this is going to be fine. This is right at the point of having Bird I'm going to spray paint you. Of having too much humidity to paint, but again, we're working under battle conditions here. There just isn't. This side, of course, the top has to fog up the worst of all. As soon as that's dry, maybe a couple hours, I can backmask it, shoot the white. I'll do the stripes by hand,
And we'll be ready to put some clear on it. And, but with this humidity, I don't even know. I had the choice, and we may have to. I wanted to show this first. If we may have to put some silver on top of that, I don't know. Certainly the silver would be a weight saving, but in this case, well, it looks like good old Brodak paint is coming to the rescue again. And boy, the Will Namora little airbrush, what a jewel. It makes a lot of this touch-up work just go duck soup. Anyway, unfortunately, we're almost at the end of the tape. I don't know if we're going to get the clear on the end of this tape. But I have found more and more uses for this little airbrush. And I hope you've had some fun or enjoyed sharing this little repair with us. Things going to get put aside to dry. We're going to close out the tape with some nice photos. These came in from Ricky Pyatt. Rocky's been interested in the Z-Tron, and we've tried to keep him abreast of what the latest changes are. Thursday next week, we're going to have a club demo, and we'll videotape some of it, of course. Sergio is going to come down and give us some more information on the latest Z-Tron. Now, these are like 8.5 by 11. They're frameable things. And by the way, thanks a lot, Ricky. I appreciate it. This ever a good Nats. When I look back at the videos and I see, boy, the Cooking Sun, the Z-Tron, I think everybody enjoyed that presentation. The thing I came away from this Nats really feeling very solid about is how reliable that Z-Tron worked under pressure. And we definitely will be using that in the B25. Big congratulations to Billy Woolridge on winning the concourse. Awesome plane, just awesome. And I noticed he had a lot of the little detail features that I had. It looks like that part may even be catching on. And the thing is, anytime you can get totally new equipment, and I really feel like that this was pretty new stuff, and get it up here with the big boys, I feel like that's a major success. And all of the things we've learned, we are snowballing them into next year's project. I think it's just going to be a great project. It'll be something that'll be a lot of fun. Not sure how competitive it'll be, because the truth is, in the world of big-time stunt, what seems to work well is to fly the same plane over and over and over every year. And that's fine for the people that enjoy that competitive part of it, but I sure enjoy having new equipment every year. I mean, I don't know. That, to me, is the real challenge of the hobby. That's the thing that really keeps me burning and bubbling inside. Anyway, we hope to see you at Middlesex. We'll be going to Middlesex this weekend, and we should be having a great contest then. We're going to try our Sato 56 in its first contest and try to get as many other people to fly it as possible. And we'll see you on the next tape, and we'll see you at the demo Thursday, the Z-Tron demo. Should be a lot of new, interesting stuff coming up. And I really hope you're enjoying the summer activities of this, what announced to be a really hot, humid summer. Please share the tape with all your friends. Share it with your enemies, too. In fact, just make everybody a friend, and then you don't have to decide. Certainly looks like in the next week or so we're going to get Miss Ashley back in one piece. Boy, what a joy that'll be to fly her again. Church bells will chime. You will be mine. And don't forget, we now have a dedicated tape with all of Paul Walker's flights on one tape. The people that want to watch Paul do his thing. And boy, just start dreaming about B-25s.